session.
Very good. At 1:32, we will call the meeting of the Pikes Peak Area Transportation and Advisory Committee together for order. And we do have a quorum. So would we like to go around and do introductions? And Jared, if you help me call those out, I'd appreciate it. I'm Victoria Chavez with El Paso County.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to help. But in the room, we only have the two people at the table, and then everyone else is online. So I'm happy to go through the online folks, but you might just have an easiest time as I do.
Okay, Ava.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I had the same issue. Good afternoon. I'm Abba Drivetti, Deputy City Engineer, City of Fountain.
Thank you. Beth?
Hi, everyone. Beth Dukes, Community Planner at Peterson Space Force Base.
Welcome. Allison?
Hello, Allison Burns, Mountain Metro Transit.
Thank you. Aaron?
This is Aaron Busto with Federal Highways.
Darren?
Hi, Darren Horsemeyer, Community Planner at Schriever Space Force Base.
Thank you. Todd?
Todd Frisbee, City of Colorado Springs, Traffic Engineer.
Jeff? Jeff of CDOT?
Sorry about that. I thought you said Jess. Why would you have? Jeff Guthrie, Region 2 Planning.
Peter?
That's why we have to G off.
Peter, FDA?
Yeah, this Peter Hadley, Community Planner, FDA Region 8.
Thank you. Hal Archer?
Hello, this is Hal Archer at the Air Force Academy Community Planner.
Jared?
Good afternoon, everyone. Jared Verner with PPACG.
Jessica?
Jess Bechtel, PPACG.
Kathleen?
Kathleen Collins, CDOT Statewide and Regional Planning.
Lachelle?
Hi, Lachelle Davis, CDOT Region 2 Locations.
Lindsay?
Good afternoon, everyone. Lindsay Hawkes, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Sam?
Sam Kuzurek, City of Woodland Park.
Scott?
Hi, good afternoon. Scott Skinner, CDOT Region 2 Transit Liaison.
Stacy?
Good afternoon, Stacy Delosier, Town of Palmer Lake Public Works.
And last but not least, at least online, Gail?
Hi, Gail Sturdivant. I'm the City Engineer, Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs.
Thank you. John, I see you in the room. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, William Mast with PPACG.
Thank you, Will. All right. I know we have a change in the agenda. So if we could get a motion to approve the agenda by moving action item C to the information items, I would appreciate that.
Victoria, this is Gail Sturdivant. I recommend the agenda with the modification that we move item that's currently listed as 6C to item 7D.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Abba. I second.
Thank you, Abba. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is approved as amended. Jared, do we have anybody with public comments today?
Madam Chair, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment, and we did not receive any written public comment that we would have submitted to the committee in advance. We do have one member of the public who is making his way to the podium. If anyone else is in the audience who'd like to provide public comment, please go ahead and queue up behind the podium at this time. If you're online and would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand function at this time.
Thanks, Jared, and thanks to the committee to take a few minutes. I just wanted to share first how we appreciate, this is Jason with Silver Key. We appreciate the support ongoing for our transportation services, and we know that an application is being reviewed, and I know that there's a lot of needs out there. I wanted to put the comment of just thank you. And what I also want to do is share with you that we know that resources are strained across the community in a lot of different ways. And we have an invitation to all of you for an event that we have coming up on March 26th at 3:30 at the Silver Key campus. And what it is we really want to engage folks to be able to come and learn about what Silver Key is. And we want to learn from you also, what does Silver Key mean to you and to the people you serve and the community we support? With the idea that we know that resources are going to be strained not only for transportation, but across all services. And we want to activate the voice of the people who care for the plight of the older adult in this community, in the Pikes Peak region. We invite you to come to this. There'll be a celebration of you. Silver Key is celebrating you. And then from that, we are going to use your stories, your voice to amplify the message about the need to bring additional resource for transportation, care services, and the needs that seniors have to be able to get access to medical, all the types of things that you support. And we're working hard to be able to make sure that we can make ends meet to keep that spirit going for those that deserve the care in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could provide that information to Jared in an email, he can send it out to all our committee members.
So, Madam Chair, one other thing that I think probably fits best here, because I see some folks that I think are here for the MMOF item. And so I just want, if you're okay with it, I'd like to just take a second, let them know what the change on the agenda meant. And so that way they can determine for themselves how long they want to sort of hang out. And if they are hanging out, maybe instead of again, moving it to 7D, just move it up to 7A and make it the first action item so they don't have to stay. Information item, sorry. Yes, I misspoke. So just so everybody knows, there was an issue with the MMOF spreadsheet that went out. I believe we had something that was mislabeled, and there was some additional information that needed to be done. And so it was determined that the best course of action was to move the MMOF off or table it as for an action at a later date. But in the meantime, when we get to the item 7A or D or whatever it ends up being, to do to set a day and time for a workshop where then all of the MMOF applications would be done through a workshop setting. That was probably a little more. It would afford the time to sort of do all those things correctly. So we thought we had sent something out this morning that you all would have received, but I can tell by some of the expressions out there that this is new and you did not get that email in advance. And so for that, I apologize, but Jess would have sent something out this morning. So again, I guess you didn't get that, so my apologies. So I just wanted everyone to know what's going to happen. And again, Victoria and Gail and others on the committee, if this is not what your intent is, let me know. But I think the intent is to have it be a workshop scheduled for the coming weeks. And then from there, it'll come back and be on the agenda. But then at that time, it would have been fully vetted. Wow. Don't get old, man. Fully vetted. And then that way, when it comes back to the actual TAC committee, it'll be a much smoother process. And the workshop is, again, that's where we'll make the sausage, so to speak. So am I speaking correctly? And is that way everybody informed? Again, I didn't want you guys to get to the item and go, what the hell have I been sitting here for, and toss over a table. So
an email was sent out this morning to everybody that had been the contact person for the MMOF application. So apologies if there were representatives in the room that did not receive said email. It did go to those that I have been communicating with. And then we can look at a time and a date to set said workshop for the MMOF, and you will be informed of that time for the contacts that me to be involved. And then if there's others that should also receive that email, if you'll just let us know here at PPACG so we can include you in that communication. Thanks.
Thank you, Jess and John. I will highlight when we get to that item, I think we'll talk about setting a workshop, but I'm guessing we'll probably send out a doodle poll. And so if people who are there do not want to sit through this, they'll probably get the doodle poll.
Yeah, and Victoria, I was going to recommend a date. I actually have 2 proposed dates and time next week, and if they did not work, then I was going to recommend a doodle poll when we get to that item. That would be one of my suggestions as well.
Okay, very good. Do you want to throw out those 2 dates so that the people in the room who may want to leave have them?
Yeah, so I was actually going to propose March 24th, somewhere between 3 and 5. I didn't have to be that whole 2-hour period. And then also March 25th from 2 to 4:30.
So March 24th, sometime between 3 and 5.
Yes. And then March 25th.
And the second one.
Yeah, March
Thank you,
25th between 2 and 4:30.
2 and 4:30. Thank
And I
you
think-
for that.
And I think that works with our service provider friends either time. And then Jared
Jeff,
is,
looks like Jeff has his hand up, so we should make sure that CDOT's involved in the review process as well. Sorry, jumping in because I.
yeah,
seen
go
it.
ahead, Geoff.
Thank you, everybody. Just point of clarification. Sorry if I missed this. My mistake if I did. Were those 2 dates either or both?
Either or.
I vote for the second one for whatever that counts for. Because
I vote for that one too, Jeff,
Sorry.
but I was trying to be flexible.
So I think, so it sounds like there may be consensus for the 25th. Jared, is the room available? Although I suspect it would be online. And then just to throw another monkey in the wrench, right? That's just mixing my metaphors. I'm going to be on vacation. So Jess, would you be available to staff that?
Yep, I can handle that one.
Okay.
Well, do we want to just finish talking about this? Because 2 people are not consensus. No offense to my 2 friends.
And who's not in consensus? I'm just kind of curious. I can't tell, Victoria. What are you seeing?
No. So I can make the 25th. Is there anybody that could not make a time on the 25th?
Mountain Metro Allison can. It was 2 to 4:30.
Correct.
Yeah, I can make that work.
Victoria's Todd. I can't make it, but Gail's got it covered.
Yeah. You would have the 2 city voting members with myself and Allison.
And then Abba, does that work for you? And Dan, does that work for you? I think those, oh, and there was one other voting member on from Woodland Park.
Works for me.
And would you like the service providers to be there as well for the workshop or bring it back to TAC and they can?
No, I think absolutely. The service providers that have applications in, I definitely think that they need to be participants in the workshop.
I will reach out to them and I'm sure they're good.
Okay, so let's tentatively set it for the afternoon of March 25th, and we'll go on from there. And now that we've discussed that item, we can knock that off the agenda going forward.
Well, can we still leave it on the agenda? Because I want to ask the PPACGs some specific questions to make sure we get things updated on the spreadsheet and how those materials are going to be circulated.
Sure.
And if you would like me to hit that, I'd be happy to do that now. Sorry, let me flip to that part on the agenda. I just want to make sure this summary spreadsheet can be very helpful, but I'm asking that we go through and complete this and make sure it's consistent with the applications. So for example, and I'll just pick on Mountain Metro, they do have, I believe they have an existing TIP and or LRTP number for their request. And then they did submit a 50% local match.
Yeah, that was a typo on that. So we'll make sure that this is cleaned up and accurate, but that should be 0% for Pike Ride, not for MMT. MMT did say 50%.
Okay, That would be great. And then I've also, so yeah, if you could just send us out in preparation for the workshop.
Yep.
Actually, even a digital version of this in addition to the PDF would be super helpful.
Sure.
One, and then just being prepared to talk with us about what steps we may need to recommend, since there will be a zero match request from Pike, right? I know we went through that in the past, but I just want to make sure that we are all have the latest and greatest information and handle that appropriately when we get together for the next TAC meeting.
Thank you, Gail. Any other thoughts on what we need for the workshop? Any other additional information people are looking for? All right, well, it looks like we kicked that one out.
Right, and then just real quick, there was one application that needed to be, had some changes made that we would have introduced today, so those will also be in the revised spreadsheet, is that correct?
Correct. Fountain Valley adjusted some of their numbers on their application. So the whole spreadsheet will be double checked and sent out in an Excel format so that you can adjust it as you see fit.
Yeah, and that's another reason
Wonderful.
why, again, we wanted to make sure we move this to a workshop to, everyone actually had all the numbers well in advance rather than springing them on them as they walked in. So I think this is the best plan moving forward. So appreciates everyone assistance in putting on the workshop.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to approval of the minutes from February 20th. Any changes or questions? And if not, I will
Oh,
accept a
wait.
motion. Oh,
Wait,
okay.
you had a hand in the audience. This is unprecedented. There's a tizzy in the audience. We don't normally have people questioning the minutes, but please.
I guess not the minutes. I guess what I was wondering, this is Karen Rowe. I am on the PPACG board to be a representative for City of Manitou Springs until they fill their engineer's position. But I was wondering with that MMOF meeting, is it going to be a public meeting? Will it be advertised on the website, or is it just with this committee?
It will be advertised.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know if that was clear. So thank you.
And Karen, has the city submitted a letter to have you be their representative?
Yes.
Okay,
It's been
great.
submitted to Andy. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the agenda, I guess. We're
All right,
we're
so-
still in the middle of that.
So we have the minutes. It doesn't sound like we have any changes to the minutes. And so I will take a motion if there is one.
Victoria, this is Gail Sturdivant. I move that we approve the minutes as published from the
February 20th?
I was going to say February 10th, but I'm saying the wrong date. It is February 20th meeting.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Allison from Mountain Metro. I second.
Thank you, Allison. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it sounds like those are approved unanimously. Board of Directors report. Who would like to give that to us today?
I will give it the old college try. As far as transportation related items, there was an action item where Jared went over the gave the legislative update, and there is a bill, help me out, Jared, SB 25-30, that will require jurisdictions that lie within the NPO, so you all there, to participate in generating a list of bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects. It's been introduced and been to one committee, and now it's going to finance, if I remember correctly. So anyway, Jared reported on that, and we can take a minute to talk in more detail if you'd like, if Jared's willing to give more of an update on that if you require it. The only other transportation related item was the Well, maybe that was it. Sorry, my apologies. I thought there was one more, but, and that was it. So very light on the transportation activities at the last board meeting.
I would love to have a little more, very short synopsis of that bill, if everybody's okay with that.
Yes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Jared Werner.
Good afternoon, Transportation Advisory Committee members. Jared Werner, Public Policy and Communications here. So SB 25-303 passed out of committee last Wednesday. It had a strike below amendment, which means the entire bill that was introduced was completely scrapped and started over again. It is next up at appropriations, and I was just double checking here. I doubt it's been scheduled, and it has not yet. But there were two amendments presented in committee. There was obviously the big long one, and then the second one actually dealt specifically with local governments. And so there is one section in the proposed bill, the amended bill, that would require local governments to provide certain things. The amendment that was made to it just says that those certain things only have to be from what's already done as part of your existing plans. So it would not require local governments to go through and create new lists. It would just be pulling the existing lists that would qualify in this bill and provide them to the MPO. And then we would have additional steps that we are looking at. And I won't editorialize beyond that. But yeah, it is going to appropriations. We are actively working on amendments on this bill. One of the things that the bill had that was not in the amendments, but we're looking to get it on there is the definition of what gap means. And we're fairly happy with where that's landing. We're also looking at further amendments to address that the list that the MPOs will be required to provide and that we will be required to get from you guys as well only comes from existing data, existing plans, existing projects. So the idea being that this is, if we're going to have to do some things, let's at least not make it cost prohibitive in the process. Happy to answer any questions, John, unless there's something else I was forgetting, but I'm hoping that kind of gives at least a surface level.
No, that's it. But I think you said there was Bill 303, and I think it is 25-030. So
sorry. Yes.
In case anybody wanted to look it up on their own.
That's why I was raising my hand, John. Because 303 is on semi-automatic firearms. I was like, what?
003.
Let's keep those off the roads. So when you say are providing from lists, is this basically pulling information from the long range transportation plan or from also local government plans as well?
Our interpretation is local government plans as well. That their expectation, and again, sometimes what's written does not necessarily translate into their intent. So we could be wrong, but it is that they want a very comprehensive statewide list of all the existing transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects, as well as gaps where those projects do not cover. So, and that's why we were very interested in getting a definition of the word gap.
And I would concur with John on all of that. Yes, it would be all documents. One of the requirements on the MPO side would be essentially requiring the active transportation plan, which we just adopted, would be part of the planning cycle, which it currently is not. We were planning to do that already. So, but it would be something that instead of a we want to do to a have to do motive on that. I know the committee was very interested in what the cost of that plan was, because that would essentially be what we would be required to do moving forward. And we would no longer have that wiggle room to say, hey, you know, while we may want to do it, but the cost is in there or it's cost prohibitive at the time, let's push it off of 1 or 2 years. We would no longer have that ability in this proposed legislation.
Two more quick questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gail.
Well, before you ask the questions, Jared, is it possible to turn the chat on for this meeting so I can put the summary of this bill in so folks can look through that? And if I'm creating a problem, let me know.
So we have typically turn off chats for public meetings just because there's no way to delineate between members of the public and members of the committee. And so you run into the risk, while we do have a few members of the public in the meeting, it has a tendency to turn into every point has to have a chat response to it. So I would
Gail,
rather not.
Gail, would you just send that
I'm just
email
gonna
to
email
Jared
it.
and Jared can send it out?
I'm emailing it right now.
Thank you. And then
Thank you
two
for-
quick questions. When is the first reporting date?
I'm double checking real quick. I believe the first one that we would have to have something is by next July, but I'm looking it up right now.
And I thought there was something for local governments by the end of the year. But that might have been the old version.
Right. If it's easier, and easier for everybody, I'm happy to kind of go through and provide a summary of the bill as amended. If people, I'm happy to take the answers or questions here and then try to answer them if I them to the committee in advance, just because I'd hate to say one thing and then turns out the amendment said something else. But in the meantime, I am looking at MPOs. We would have to report that list by next July 2026. By next October 2026, MPOs and CDOT would have to provide an update to the Transportation Legislation Review Committee. In terms of what's required on the local side, on the shall, it would be by the end of this year, December 31, 2025, local governments shall submit all planned transit, bicycle, and ped projects included in any transportation capital other plan and it's to its metropolitan planning organization.
See, I remembered mine like a steel trap. There's a like rabid possum locked up in there, but
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to action items. Bring Will up to the front and talk about the MPO boundary.
Hello, this is William Mast with PPACG, the GIS and Modeling Manager, here to discuss proposed changes to the MPO boundary update. The MPO boundary is typically updated following decennial census because the census results in new urban boundaries. And by rule, our MPO needs to ensure that they encompass all the census urban areas that are defined in, along with the adjusted urban areas that are done to help delineate urban from rural roadways. So the census urban area boundary was finalized in 2022 using the 2020 census results. And then we started working with CDOT as soon as we could to start working on the adjusted urban area, which was finalized at the end of last year. We have some small changes that need to be made to the MPO boundary just to accommodate expansion of the urban areas. Really, there's only one area where we're changing the urban or rural classification of existing roads that are eligible to receive federal funding. So most of these changes are very small, but they are designed to help accommodate future growth. We were also making a couple of small edits just to improve clarity, and we'll talk about that as we move on to the next slide, please. So here we have the UZA is what it's commonly called. This is the census urban area. So like I said, this was brought about in 2022. There were new urban area definitions that the census came up with following the 2020 decennial census. And it's currently defined as at least 2,000 housing units and populations of at least 5,000 people. The big change in our area was that Palmer Lake no longer qualified as an urban area with the census. Next slide. However, recognizing that the developed part of Palmer Lake has historically been considered urban, and we considered traffic flowing through there to be similar to some other urban areas that was maintained in the adjusted urban area. And again, the purpose of the adjusted urban area is to kind of a typical term is to say smooth out the urban boundaries. And so we smoothed out the urban boundaries according to roadways that were functionally classified with the FHWA to maintain kind of their urban characteristics in terms of traffic control. And typical traffic volume as well as construction. And there weren't a lot of changes to that boundary either from what we had previously established. We just added some additional growth out around like the Falcon area and for growth in really just east of Fountain. There were some minor changes though that coincided with some census block group boundary updates, though that occurred in the Woodland Park area, the Green Mountain Falls area, and we'll talk about that and how that kind of forced our hand to adjust some of the MPO boundaries to accommodate. Next slide, please. So the first thing we took the opportunity, since we're going through the update, is to go ahead and align it with other data. For example, part of our MPO boundary follows different creeks. And I'm not sure how it was digitized before, but we simply pulled the National Hydrography data set to go ahead and get an outline of the creeks that make up our boundary and then made it coincident. You can see an example here. Our boundary is in the red dashed line for the MPO. It's supposed to be following that right there is Williams Creek. It doesn't really according to the latest hydrography data set. And so we just took the opportunity to go ahead and make it coincident. That also aligns it again with census boundaries, because census boundaries oftentimes also use creeks and rivers, and they're also formed when they did the 2020 block groups and tract updates. They use the hydrography data set. So again, it just helps make our planning data a little bit more coincident. We also used some data from the Bureau of Land Management when it came to surveyed boundaries, specifically when we call out boundaries that follow section lines. Again, made sure that it was coincident with the latest information from the BLM and also updated for the Pike National Forest boundary. That data was pulled from USGS. So again, no actual changes in a lot of the areas and a lot of the boundaries. We're just simply making it coincident with already established boundaries with other data that have been updated since the last time this was done. Next slide. So where we did make changes, proposed updates, you can see in sections of red here. And we're going to go through each one. They're all pretty small, but they're designed to accommodate either changes that were made to the urban area, again, small ones, or potential future development. Next slide. So looking up around the monument area, Mount Herman Road crosses, it leaves the MPO, heads northwest, comes back into the MPO for just a very small section, and then continues west where it's outside of the MPO and in the Pike Forest. So there was just a small section of road that was really kind of within the MPO and eligible for funding through the MPO, and then big sections that were outside of it. We went ahead and changed the boundary so it's coincident actually with census block group boundaries. The census block group follows Mount Herman Road. So that area that you see in red means that the road for the whole section that's actually designated and functionally classified with the FHWA is eligible to receive federal funding is within the MPO. We don't have to worry about kind of piecemealing it should funds ever be allocated to any improvements there. And again, for planning purposes, it aligns with the census block group boundary there. Looking down near Fountain, the city of Fountain has annexed some area that is extended outside the MPO. It is not required that the MPO adhere to municipal boundaries, but it is recommended that member governments that are within the MPO contain those boundaries, again, for planning purposes and future development. One of the things that we like to do when updating the MPO boundaries is try and maintain that 20-year horizon, areas that could be developed and become urban over the next 20 years. So rather than just sticking to an exact copy of the Fountain city limits that are going outside the MPO, that's what you see in orange. What we did is we simply used section lines from BLM data, and we followed two section lines to connect it back down to Williams Creek, which is the existing boundary. So that gives a little bit of a buffer should in the future perhaps Fountain pursue other annexation or other development occur just outside the city limits. Next slide. This is an area that's going to be down by the Pikes Peak International Raceway, just south of the power plant. We brought this in, and again, trying to think ahead over the next 20 years. We know that we have a planned rail park development that's going to be going into this area. For planning purposes, it makes sense to not try and split that rail park in half, as some area inside the MPO and some area outside the MPO. So we went to the next exit south of the current boundary. That's exit 123. And we simply followed Lauren Lane, a small road down there, took it all the way west and to the Fort Carson boundary. And then just like the current MPO, it just follows the Fort Carson boundary back up to Rock Creek. So the area in red there would be probably the largest section that we're adding to the MPO. Again, it doesn't really change the designation of any existing roads eligible for federal funding. It just accommodates future growth, especially with the rail park. This small section is near the area of Cascade. So if you're heading west on Highway 24, it's before you get to Green Mountain Falls. This was really only updated again to align with, again, census block groups and changes that were made to the urban area boundary, only because the urban area boundary with the census also followed the new block group. And it just happened to extend a little bit outside the current MPO. So rather than trying to trace the block group, we simply followed Cascade Creek until it intersects the Pikes Peak Highway, and then the boundary continues. So it kind of looks like a large area. It's pretty small, but it doesn't change the urban or rural classification and any roadways that are already eligible for federal funding. It just makes planning easier because it aligns it with some census boundaries. Green Mountain Falls is kind of an odd jurisdiction because it straddles both Teller and El Paso County. You can kind of see there's a kind of a yellow outline that is the previous boundary that we had for urban area, and that also came from the census urban area. It doesn't actually align with Green Mountain Falls municipal boundary at all. It really doesn't actually align with much of anything, including census block groups. So we tried to make it a little easier and just said, let's just include Green Mountain Falls, even the little bit that extends in Teller County. We'll just follow the town boundary and include it in the MPO. The census urban area was extended outside Woodland Park to go a little bit further west than previously. So again, this is an area that was pushed to be a little bit outside what we had before or previously, and it went down to Rock Creek. And so we are simply following that boundary at Rock Creek where it intersects with Highway 24. And then we've got some housing units that are just north of Rock Creek. That's the kind of triangle portion that you see there in red. And that follows a section line. So we're following the section line until it intersects back with Rock Creek. Again, no existing roadways eligible for federal funding are really changing here, except for Highway 24. We're adding about just over half a mile effectively of a stretch of Highway 24 would be in the MPO versus the TPR 14. Next slide. And then again, just to clean things up when it comes to the western side of Woodland Park, it followed Rock Creek previously, but the boundary of Woodland Park does not adhere to Rock Creek. It crosses the other side of it. So we are simply going due north along section lines, maintaining with the boundary of Woodland Park until we come back to Rock Creek, the established MPO boundary. This is where we have some areas that we're actually proposing we remove from the MPO. So at the very, very northwest corner of the MPO, the area that you see with purple hash marks, we are proposing to go ahead and drop. That area is in a census block group that is not included anywhere else in the MPO. So again, for planning purposes, we just thought it would be better to keep it coincident with the census boundary. So it simply follows a forest road back to Highway 67, follows 67 back up to Long Gulch, and then continues along Long Gulch, just like the existing boundary does. Again, doesn't change the urban rural designation, doesn't change the MPO designation of any of the roads here that are eligible for federal funding. It just aligns it with census block group and helps in planning purposes. Then we have some area that we add along the north side there in red. Again, that's just following Long Gulch all the way to the Teller El Paso County line. And then we follow the Teller El Paso County line due south until we get to Rampart Range Road. At which point it's back to the original MPO boundaries. Again, that change just follows census boundaries from the 2020 census and the block group boundaries. Again, just helps planning purposes, makes planning a little bit easier, and follows established boundaries. So some area gets added, again in red, and then we lose a little bit on the Pike National Forest side. That's that hashed purple bit. Again, no actual roadways are in there that are eligible for federal funding, so it doesn't change anything as far as lane miles. It just cleans up the boundary for planning purposes. And those are all the changes. Are there any questions? All right, if there's no questions or concerns, we are asking that this be approved so that we can forward it to the CAC and eventually to the board for adoption.
We have a question from Gail.
Okay.
Thank you, Victoria. Gail, student, City of Colorado Springs. First, I want to thank you for the tremendous amount of work. I think this went into revising the MPO boundary well. So thank you for doing that. I don't actually have a question. I just wanted to acknowledge all your efforts to be able to go through and do this analysis. So if there's no other questions, I'm prepared to make a motion, Victoria.
Any other questions from anybody? I will second your acknowledgement of Will's work.
Yeah, this is a lot of effort and a lot of, I mean, very thoughtful process that you went through there. And I think it was all very logical and made perfect sense. So if there's no other questions, then I would move that we approve the proposed MPO boundaries as presented in by the Pikes or the PPACG staff.
Thank you, Gail. Do we have a second? I'm going to start calling on people.
That's for lack of a second. Nice try, Will.
This is Abba. I second.
Thank you, Abba. And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
And I'll let Jess start with B, the tip amendment, and I'll probably jump in if needed.
Sounds good. Yep, I'll kick it off. Let me hold up here. So this is a formal tip amendment request as requested by El Paso County to adjust tip ID 2023-008, and that's their Judge Orr Road and Bluegill Drive intersection realignment project. They found during design that they needed to make some adjustments to the project scope. They are looking to roll forward some of the funding from FY25 into FY26. And they are also updating the name of the project. I'll let Victoria describe and give the details of that project adjustment. It's a little technical, so I'll let you take it away.
Sure. We found during our design phase that because Meadow Lake Airport put their runway far too close to our road and then purchased up a bunch of easements to prevent us from putting a road anywhere near Judge Orr and Meadow Lake Parkway. So we could no longer realign Bluegill to Judge Orr, unfortunately, which makes the absolute most sense. And determined that we did own a parcel on Bluegill. So we're going to move the Bluegill connection to US 24. Again, not our ideal solution, but it is what we are left with. And we're going to connect that then to US 24 just south of Judge Orr Road. And we are going to then go ahead and close off Cottontail and make Bluegill South a right in, right out so that we have proper access management. And I will highlight the reason we're rolling forward money is that we are working in conjunction with CDOT and their intersection improvement at US 24 and Judge Orr. We are working on that project together. So they are doing the design for us right now. We're just going to hold and roll forward the money until the construction phase and then give it over to CDOT. So while it looks like in the tip, we are not making progress, we absolutely are making progress. We're just going to give CDOT the money at the end in a lump sum. So I'll take any questions anybody may have on that. Okay, and with that, I will request a motion.
Victoria, this is Gail. I recommend approval of the fiscal year 2025-29 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment 3 to the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors.
Thank you, Gail. A second, please.
This is Allison from Mount Metro, second.
Thank you, Allison. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you all. I appreciate this very much.
It actually, although it sounds like it was a project with a lot of angst behind it, I think you're going to end up with a good product in the end, Victoria.
We're going to make it work.
That darn airport.
Yeah, you know, it used to be a rural area and now it's not so much anymore. So I think we have pretty much gone through the Multimodal Options Fund. Is there any further discussion on that topic at this moment? Very good. Let's move on to Danelle and the Unified Work Program.
Danelle's not available, but at this point we are pulling together the UPWP to bring back to you guys as a draft. And I'm trying to remember, Jess, if you remember, chime in. I think we're looking at a month or so to bring back that first draft.
Yes, so it looks like Danelle has request for information or requesting the information to be given to her by April 21st. So probably May it'll come back to you with the draft list.
Any questions for Jess or John on this one? And for any of you newbies, basically, they're going to be looking for us to provide our planning, our local jurisdiction planning activities that are required to be in the Unified Work Program. Okay, very good. B, Complete Streets, Jason.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Madam Chair. This could be a very short item depending on questions. Just want to sort of familiarize you with the project that's recently gotten started. So PPACG and Olson are developing a Complete Streets toolbox for member governments. This is a document that'll provide resources for Complete Streets or similar initiatives on a voluntary basis for member governments. So it won't list projects, mostly just offer examples, best practices, and other guidance for Complete Streets. And as an added benefit, the project helps us meet regulatory requirements for our IAJA funding, which is how this is being funded. So the IAJA bill requires MPOs to spend 2% of our planning budget on Complete Streets, and this project gets us to that threshold. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ted Richard, our Olson project manager.
Thank you, Jason. Ted Richard with Olson. This slide just covers what Jason already covered, so I won't spend any time on it. Next slide, please. So our process for developing this Complete Streets toolbox, basically 3 phases. We are reviewing all the member agencies' current policies, plans, approaches to Complete Streets. We are doing stakeholder interviews with all member agencies, and we are also doing kind of a national best practices review of peer regions, communities, just to see what other people have done. Phase 2 will be evaluating those best practices and what the member agencies are doing to identify focus areas for developing a preliminary tool set. And then phase 3 will be actually turning that into a functional toolbox and providing written recommendations. We're scheduled to be completed with this work by September of this year. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we are meeting with member agencies. One's on the left we've already connected with, including Green Mountain Falls earlier this morning. Up next is another list that we're working on. Hope to have that finished soon. And I guess one question I had for this committee is if there's other agencies or groups that we should contact as we continue this process. Any questions?
Ted, I just have a curiosity question. It looks like we're going into the Central Front Range. Is there, or I'm not the Central, yeah, the Central Front Range TPR. I'm just wondering what the thought process is there.
It was really covering all the member counties of PPACG.
I see. Thank you.
I had a question. This is Todd.
Please stop.
Sure.
I see you connected with City of Colorado Springs. This is going to be a really embarrassing question. Did you connect with me on that?
It's not embarrassing. I'm old too. Actually, we visited with Carrie.
Okay. Fair
Well,
enough.
can I ask a follow-up question? When you visited with Carrie, did she share with you that we have a complete streets policy framework and guidelines?
Yes, we are aware. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I suggest that you have a follow-up conversation with Todd and he can share with you some recent activities associated with complete streets you just need to be aware of. It may not impact your work product, but something you need to be cognizant of.
Absolutely. Katie Salerno, who's on my team, is on the call as well, and I'm sure she's taking good notes of further action items.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Ted.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for Ted? Sounds like you're off the hook. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to CDOT updates.
So
Hello,
Jeff,
this is
John? Oh.
Kathleen. I
Please go ahead,
coordinated-
Kathleen.
I coordinated with Jeff, and so he recommended I go first, so I am. So in terms of March stack updates, we have we had state and federal legislative updates. We went over the fiscal year 26 budget. We did have a greenhouse gas modeling update. And then back on February 6th, we did meet with TPR administrators to talk about where they were with their TPR administration. In terms of statewide MPO meetings, we are now going to add a couple of standing agenda items. One will be federal updates. And so FTA and FHWA will report to us related to items that impact MPOs, but also, and whenever they can, have any information to report. The information's coming in dribs and drabs, but they will be giving us updates. And then also, we are going to have legislative updates related to MPO impacting legislation. So that's something that might be of interest to folks to know about. In terms of the 2050 statewide plan, we did wrap up the third round of meetings, and the next round will actually be providing some rough draft regional transportation plans to the TPRs. The Central Front Range next meeting is on April 14th. So that is coming up soon. In relation to the statewide plan, we also have telephone town halls that are going to be scheduled. There's going to be 9 of them. And transportation commissioners will be present as well as other CDOT staff. They're sort of like a radio talk show. And the idea is to get input from the public on statewide and regional transportation issues that they want answers to, and getting answers from decision makers. And then a statewide plan survey is also going to be distributed. We're coordinating with both the STAC and MPOs on distribution of the statewide transportation survey. And then the TC did meet today, and Grand Valley NPO presented their greenhouse gas analysis at a workshop yesterday, and they did well. And so they're anticipating approval of their greenhouse gas report in April, with adopting their long-range transportation plan at the end of April. And I think that's all the updates I have. Thank you.
Any questions for Kathleen? Okay, let's move on to Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Kathleen. You stole one of my thunders with the Transportation Commission Telephone Town Hall. I just wanted to say to everybody, stay tuned. Look for the exact date and time for your Transportation District 9, which encompasses Park, Teller, Fremont, and El Paso counties. So your Commissioner Hannah Parsons and Region 2 Director Shane Ferguson will be the hosts of that. Again, stay tuned for more information as to the exact date and time and how to participate, and we will be politely leaning on everybody to help us distribute this, if that's fine, the invitation far and wide to as many people as we can. And then we look forward, Region 2 looks very forward to working with PPACG through the UPWP drafting process. And Jason O'Brien, thanks for that great highlight on that Complete Streets Toolbox. I know another MPO in Region 2 that will be very interested in looking at that finished product because they're also working through a similar situation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anybody else from CDOT on the phone that would like to provide any other updates? All right, member entity announcements from anybody in the room or the virtual room.
This is Allison with Mountain Metro. I don't have anything that I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you, Allison. All right, I guess we will move on to items for future TAC meetings. After we set up the workshop, we will have that item come back. I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about Complete Streets and the Unified Work Program. That will come back as an action item. John, anything else that you want to alert the committee of coming up in the future?
No, we've already started an internal discussion on our 5-year plan because currently when the 2050, excuse me, was adopted, we were in attainment. So that sets our next deadline for our next long range plan for 5 years from now. So we're looking at February of 2030. And there obviously are a lot of items that are multiple year items. So we need to sort of plan everything out now and decide what's coming and when. So that will be a agenda item or items in the coming months to sort of bounce off you what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what we can afford to do, what we can't afford to do, et cetera. So.
Very good. Any final thoughts from anybody?
You have somebody rushing the microphone in the room.
Hi, Karen.
This is Karen Rowe. I'm putting on my PPACG Grant Navigator hat. I just wanted to let you know that City of Fountain got the CDOT Main Street revitalization for a restroom in the Aga Park area, so through their Parks and Rec. And then City of Manitou Springs did get the CDOT Main Street revitalization, $250,000 for their Creek Walk number 4. So they also have TAP funds and MMOF, but they're also getting the CDOT Main Street revitalization. And so they're hoping to get that project out to advertisement soon. But from the grant perspective too, also City of Victor did submit for the rural and tribal assistance grant to get design money to pave the roads. And that was due March 18th. Well, it opened March 18th. It closes in April, but it's a first come, first serve grant process. And then Green Mountain Falls also submitted theirs for the bridge design over Fountain Creek. So, but for the most part, a lot of the grants are kind of on hold, but there's still some of them out there. In fact, right now, the environmental Mountain and Plains Environmental Justice one, it's contracted to JSI from EPA. And so the funds are obligated. So they are going out for their second round of competitive grants on that. It's 150, 250, and 350,000. 3 organizations applied on the last round. None of them got it. I think for the next round, just one of them, City Fountain's going to apply again. But if anyone's interested, that one's a little complicated. If anyone's interested, let me know. And we're looking to see. We're still meeting with people on federal grants to be ready for when the grants come back out again. So like Victoria, we're still watching the bridge investment program to see what that comes back out as and if it's something we can all look at pursuing. And I just wonder if anyone has any other questions for me or any updates on what they've heard from their grant applications.
Well, Victoria, this is Gail. Maybe I can add in. I was actually in DC last week and met with Federal Highways and Federal Railroad Administration along with the Colorado delegation. The one thing that was really interesting, I think like programs like the Bridge Investment Program is going to come out. I think they were really, well, from what I heard, they were waiting for the continuing resolution to be able to do the announcements for the awards. It sounds like they were also going through a second round of screening to make sure that the projects that had been recommended were still consistent with the new merit criteria that we've never seen, but really that weren't in violation of some of the more recent executive orders. So I'm actually hopeful we hear about that one soon, but they did say we are going to see more NOFOs coming with the programs they're planning on continuing. And you're likely going to see terms and conditions changes because all the administrations are going through a review of their terms and conditions to make sure that they're in compliance with the executive order. So I think those are the bigger changes that we're going to see. But I feel pretty confident from what I heard that we're going to see transportation funding. I think the thing that, even though the continuing resolution passed, I think the one thing that might slow it down is reconciliation, because they basically with that continuing resolution, they just hit the top line budget numbers and they still have to go down and do cuts. And they have targeted areas for cuts, and most of them are not in transportation, but we still need to wait and see.
Thank you for that update, Gail. That's very helpful. And congratulations to award winners and good luck to applicants. And I think with that, at 2:34, we will adjourn the meeting.